Present here today from our Scrum team for the Developer Handbook are myself, Mars Romer, the Scrum Master. The development team itself is Dave Shively, Michael Stevens, Natalie Russell, Taylor Tho, and Katie Sloan. Katie is also acting as an alternate product owner in the absence of our product owner, Elizabeth. And also absent currently on holidays is Sarah Blake, who's also part of the development team. I'd also like to acknowledge that most of us in the Victoria area conduct much of our government business and live on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, today known as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and also from the territories of the Wasanich peoples. I'd also like to acknowledge that some on this call may be joining us from other traditional territories. So if this is your first sprint review, or if you're in between sprint reviews and forget what they're about, it's an informal working meeting between the Scrum team as well as the key stakeholders. It is held at the end of our 3-week sprint, during which we are developing the next iteration of the Developers Handbook. The purpose of the meeting is to demonstrate the latest work that the team has done on the product and to also give our key stakeholders an update on our progress, as well as to collect any initial feedback from you. The feedback will be really useful to us in prioritizing and planning the future work for the product. This is not the only opportunity for the stakeholders to provide feedback. You can contact us at any time to send us your feedback. Please send it to our product owners, Elizabeth and Katie, or if you don't have their email, please contact me and I can make sure that you can get connected to them. And with that, I will turn it over to Katie to carry on with the rest of the sprint review and demo.
Yeah, thanks, Mars. Few seconds here. Pull up my speaking notes. So yeah, hi everyone. As Mars said, I'm Katie. Thanks for coming to the sprint review for sprint 3. Similar to Mars, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen peoples, on whose traditional territory we gather and who are known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to live and work in this beautiful place, and I just invite you to also reflect and acknowledge the territories that you might be located today. So yeah, and I also just want to reiterate what Mars was saying. There's been a slight change in the makeup of the team. Elizabeth Vanderbiesen is the product owner for this project. However, her day job of being the director of archival and records initiatives means that she's got quite a bit on her plate right now, and as such, she can't always make all of the meetings. So she's asked me to kind of cover for her while she's away, which I'm happy to do. Yeah, and I would also just like to say, yeah, I'll be covering for Elizabeth when she's unable to make a meeting, and you might be hearing more from me as I reach out to you as stakeholders, just to kind of get your thoughts on the project so far. If you have any questions about the content, you can always, yeah, I'm going to try to reach out to you more. And as always, like Mars said, if you have any questions, feel free to contact either myself or Mars or Elizabeth, and we'll be happy to get back to you and discuss yeah, any concerns or feedback you might have about the handbook. Yeah, so also Mars, I'm just gonna kind of parrot back what Mars has already said, but I just want to stress again how important all of you are to this project. Your feedback on the work that we do is really important. It allows us as developers to kind of make to build the best product for you. While the development team has the records management and archival expertise, we really want to create something that's going to work for the stakeholders. We can create a perfect product, but if no one can understand it or don't really know how to use it, then it's no good. So we really do want to hear from you. So we also realize that these meetings are very quick. They're only about 45 minutes, and we tend to throw a lot of information at you all at once. And I know for me personally, I'm a bit of a thinker, so I like to think and digest on things. So if there's anything that comes up during these meetings that you think a little bit later, you're like, I'm not quite sure about that, or I wonder if the development team has considered this, or yeah, I'm just a little unclear about these things. Please do not hesitate at all to contact myself, Mars, or Elizabeth, and we'll be happy to take your feedback. So that's kind of the preamble. So let's get into what the development team was up to these last 3 weeks. So I'm just going to share my screen. Just 1 second here. Okay, so the goal for this last sprint was to allow for ministries to be able to submit an ORCS project proposal to go before the prioritization committee. To meet this goal, we accomplished the following tasks. So we included, sorry, I'm just going to scroll really fast. You get seasick, maybe close your eyes for a few minutes. So we included the prioritization of ORCS development requests section into the handbook. So the purpose of this section is to describe the purpose of what the prioritization committee is, how ministries can submit an application for the ORCS projects to that committee, and how a project is assessed and prioritized within the committee. So you can see here we have a little introduction, just a little bit of more information about the GRS prioritization committee and how prioritization is determined, and a little bit about the process here. So we included that into the handbook. I will just caveat and say that we did run into a bit of a roadblock with this goal, namely how a ministry submits a formal application to the prioritization committee. We do have a form that is currently used by GRS, and I'll just bring it up here. The information schedule request form, which I have up here on the screen. Some of you might already be familiar with it. So I'll just maybe give a little bit of pretext to what this is. So when a ministry identifies that they need an ORCS or they want to amend a current ORCS, they work with their GRO to kind of identify that need, and the GRO works with them to see if they're ready for a project. And if they are, ministries fill out this form, usually with the help of their GRO. It just kind of gives a little bit of context to what the request is, what it's about, and just gives some information that's really helpful for us on the GRS side. So about information schedule coverage, records that relate to the request, additional considerations to determine the client's needs, and also just a brief summary of what the project is about. So the roadblock kind of came in. Oh, sorry, just let me find my place here. 1 second. So, however, I should say this form was designed to be used in-house. So that means that it's assumed that this form was designed with the thought in mind that a developer in GRS would be the one who's writing and guiding the org's development project. This form might not then be applicable to ministries writing orgs, or we might need to slightly change up some of the information within the form, just so that it makes sense for orgs projects that are being developed by ministry developers. So what we wanted to do is just to review the form with the IST team. The GRO team, we wanted to get their input, especially since the form might have to change or be modified slightly for ministry developed works. But unfortunately, this part of the goal we weren't able to complete by the end of the sprint. The summer is always a bit of a hard time to to work on big projects like this, just because, you know, people go away on vacation and it's hard to find a time that works for everyone. And I know that there's been a bit of a turnover both in the archival team, and there's a new manager coming on the IST team. So it was just a bit of a, just weren't able quite to make our schedules work at the end of the day. So this is the case with this goal. We weren't able to meet and discuss the form, but I am pleased to say that I do have a meeting with Brittany Jackson, who's the new manager of client services over on the IST team, next week. So I'm hopeful that we can complete this goal and get it done by the end of the next sprint, so we can share that with you. So that's kind of the main goal that we worked on this week, was just trying to get more information about the prioritization committee process into the handbook. But we also completed some other smaller goals based on the feedback that we received from the stakeholders in previous sprints. So I thought I'd just kind of go over some of the work that we got based on the feedback that we got from you. So I'm just going to scroll up. So again, if you get a bit seasick, you might want to just look away for a second. Okay, so we got a lot of feedback about the content of our orgs, or about the content of the handbook. And I went through a lot of it, and we put it into, oh, sorry, let me try that again. I still get a bit nervous public speaking, so please bear with me. So we incorporated edits regarding the readability and clarity of the handbook's content into the following sections. So we, yeah, there's just some questions about some of the readability and clarity on sections like the Introduction to Developers Handbook. So we kind of made some copy edits just to make it a little more clear to the end user. We also made some edits to the stages in the development process. Some of the feedback that we got was it was just a little too wordy and a little too much information all at once, when this is just supposed to provide a snapshot of the different stages, and we can get into the details once we get to the actual sections. So we tried to kind of clean up some of the comments and some of the content in these stages. And I think we also got some feedback that it would be nice to get a few more visuals into the handbook. Right now it's a lot of text, and not everybody learns by reading. So we also created a information schedule lifestyle kind of infographic, just to kind of give a high-level snapshot of how the org's development process works. So if you're more of a visual learner, hopefully this is a little less daunting than reading through pages and pages of text. And one of the other things we received feedback on, let's see if I can find it here. For the assess readiness section, we have kind of a checklist. We had a checklist that was in a PDF form, and we got some feedback saying, is there any way we could have this checklist as a fillable PDF so we don't have to print things off and bring them to meetings? We can just email them to our GRO instead of, just trying to reduce our paper footprint. So I'm happy to say we took that feedback, and we made this checklist into a fillable PDF so you can do everything online. You don't have to print stuff off and worry about paper. So that's exciting stuff. What else did we do? So we also just included, because we realized that some of the other feedback we received from stakeholders is that we really describe the how process, but we're not really describing the what or why. Why do ministries need an information schedule? Well, what's the importance of information schedules to government? Why should we care? So we took that into consideration as well. So we were thinking of maybe adding just a little section about just basic information about what an information schedule is, and just why ministries may need to have, why they do need to have a information schedule. So talking a little bit about like the IMA, the Information Management Act, and some of the requirements laid out in that legislation. Just why information schedules are required and why good records management is really important for government ministries. So we started working on the content, but again, we didn't quite finish it by the end of this sprint. So hopefully we'll have some content to share with you by the end of the next sprint. And we also have to find it here. Sorry for all the scrolling. We also thought we should include a link to some of the government's already created resources about let's try this again, Katie. So we included an information page into the handbook where ministry developers can find links to different records management courses that are offered through the GRS learning site. So these are already created courses that might be really helpful for ministry developers to take, because they kind of give a little more contextualized information about the records management programs that exist already, that exist through government. So we have a link to some courses that we would suggest that they take prior to starting the ORC's development process, such as IM 112 Records Management Foundations. And I would also, we don't have it listed here, but probably IM 117, the Information Management, Access, Information Security, Privacy, and Records Management. So we included that as well, just to kind of give more resources to our stakeholders, because we want to give as much information as the ministry developers might need. And maybe one last point I'll just bring up. So we've also heard you about making sure that the handbook is accessible, and that that it's accessible for everybody. So I know that Taylor did a little bit of research into things such as what's good colors and sizes of font to use. So we're constantly updating and making changes well, we're not constantly, but we are aware of those things, and we're trying to make sure that we create a product that everybody of all different walks of life can access and use. So I've been talking for a long time. So I'm going to hand the proverbial mic over to the group now for your comments and feedback. And I'll also just bring it up. Also pass the mic to the development team, just in case I missed anything. Do chime in and just let me know, or just chime into the group and let us know if I missed anything. So again, and I just want to reiterate this point that I know I've said this about 3 or 4 times now, but you can always submit your feedback to the group at any time. You don't have to wait until these sprint meetings to get in touch with us. There's a lot of content here, and yeah, Mars, myself, and Elizabeth are always here to answer any questions or take your comments, take some critiques. That's what we're here for. So yeah, I'm going to open it up now to the group and let you guys chat because I'm tired of talking.
Awesome, Katie. Thanks so much. I see a couple of hands up. So I think Melinda, you had your hand up first, and then Jennifer.
Hi, thanks, Mars. Thanks, Katie, for that. I just have 3 quick things. The first on page 6, where you have the image, the life cycle image. Am I understanding this incorrectly? That because I find that the title of that, the information schedule cycle, is a little bit confusing, because to me, when I think information schedule, I'm thinking, oh, it's DEFR, you know, those kinds of things. So, you know, the everyday reader may not understand that this is actually the cycle of, you know, the process of going through to get your orgs.
Okay. So you want clarity, sorry?
Yeah,
Give
it more clarity, because, you know, other people aren't going, that could be misleading to them or confusing.
Okay.
I could be overthinking it, but I think that, yeah, the title does need to reflect the action of what this life cycle actually says.
Okay.
Yeah, Melinda, this is Natalie. I actually co-created that with Elizabeth. And when she first presented it to me, I was confused because at first I was thinking information lifecycle, because that's the background I come from.
Yeah.
And then I sort of started looking into it, and I thought, oh, this is what a schedule goes through when it's being created. So I agree that it's not obvious, and there's even some terminology in it. Those longer titles, those are things that I came up with to try and pack in everything that we're trying to convey. So we will certainly revisit that title. And I think I see Linda says it needs a verb. So yeah, so we'll perhaps play with some verbs and see what we come up with. Yeah, thank you.
And then I had on page 15 with the prioritization process, I think to keep it consistent with the rest of the, just my thought is to keep the formatting of each line, to keep it to finish off the, don't let the words go past underneath the letters or the numbers, sorry, because the other ones are finished underneath where it starts. Am I making sense? I'm a little bit tired today, so I'm sorry for that ahead of time.
So the line breaks?
Yeah, they're so because it looks like it, you know, the return on the typewriter didn't work right, and everything just kept on going. So just sort of to maybe clean that up, and then it's the same with I think it was page 14 as well, because I noticed that there too, that, you know, it just looked a little bit messy there. And then I just have one comment. My concern is, how long is this going to be? My concern is that the longer it is, the more that people aren't going to be interested in it. And I know that's tough to do, because you have to have all of that information in there, the pertinent information in there, to properly guide the clients at the same time. And I'm sympathizing with you. Where do you have the happy medium there? So those are my 3 things.
Yeah, and that's something that the development team is really grappling with, because it's hard to find that balance between, because there's a lot of information and there's a lot of steps that go into orgs development, and We're trying to make it as simple and easy to read as possible, but on the flip side, there is a lot of information, and it's, I guess as an Orcs developer myself, there's a lot of stuff to know, and there's a lot of steps that go into the Orcs development process. So I will just say that we've really tried to cut down, be as least wordy as we can, but we still want to make sure that we're capturing the integrity of how to build an Orcs. And I think at the end of the day, I know people don't like reading textbooks, but sometimes that's just what you have to do to get to do the job. So we're trying really hard to find that happy medium between not having a really long document, but having something that also works for the end user. So don't really have an answer for you, but we're trying really hard.
That's okay. Thank you, Katie. I think of my clients and revenue, and, I want them to have something that's easy for them to go through, and they don't have to be consumed with time, because a lot of them don't have that time. So I've already been promoting this with the people that I've had meetings with already. So hopefully this won't be new to all the major people. So thank you again.
Thanks, Melinda. Jen, you're next on the line for having a hand up.
Yeah, first of all, this has been some great work that I've been reading through, and while I agree that the title of the little flow chart is confusing, the actual having the graphic there is fantastic, and I feel really helpful to the people who are slightly more visual learners. And then I just wanted to kind of address the whole length of document thing as well, mostly in that, there's a lot of information, but you also have the tabs at the top, right? And so people can jump around if they need to, and that, I hope, does help. And mostly why I'm bringing that up again is because one of the things I was wondering about is whether there could be some sort of abbreviation glossary, because it's great to cut down on the wordiness, to put in all of the abbreviations, the acronyms, all of that. And I just think that if someone isn't super familiar with all of them, they might not want to be able, or they might not want to try and scroll back for the one instance where it's been mentioned in full and try and find that amongst all of the other text. And I know I came from Ministry of Environment, and there's some Ministry of Finance abbreviations that I did not know because we didn't use them where I worked. So if I had been suddenly thrust into the role of, oh, I have to develop this thing, and I'm trying to read through, and what is this? And I have to keep going back and checking. And if there's just a kind of a central spot for all of that, it might be helpful. But otherwise, yeah, really great. I really enjoyed everything that I saw here and everything you talked about. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe, yeah, could talk about that as a group, whether or not we could just have kind of like a cheat sheet or like a abbreviation kind of quick glossary of quick terms. It's definitely something we can talk about. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. Emily, you've got your hand up next.
Thanks. Yeah, so just on that theme of digestibility, on this page, I don't know if this is feasible, because I don't know if there's a one-to-one match or if it's feasible to maintain the integrity of this life cycle and create a one-to-one match to the tabs. But I was thinking, is there would it make sense that does the life cycle follow the steps that you've laid out in the tabs and the instructions on each page? I see there's you've got a research and analysis tab, and you've got a research and analysis bubble in the life cycle. You've got drafting, you've got appraisal. Do you know what I mean? Is there any way to align those for that makes sense and maintains the integrity of the information, but also adds to the digestibility and logic of this for people who are not experts?
So I think if what I'm understanding, you're kind of saying like to match the tabs to here. So like if they want to just know something about like drafting, they could click on drafting and it would kind of take them there.
Well, if there's an alignment of what's in the diagram of the information schedule development lifecycle and the instructions that you're presenting here tab by tab by tab, like not to force it to be that if it's not true to the life cycle or if it doesn't align, but I'm just wondering, is there alignment? And if so, maybe it makes sense to match them. So maybe that's something to take back and think about. That might not be an immediate answer.
Yeah, I mean, the life cycle, this life cycle that we mapped here, it actually it follows through beyond the approval of the schedule. So whereas the Developers Handbook captures just what you're doing when you're developing the schedule, the life cycle actually goes beyond that to implementation and then sort of an ongoing review of the usage of the orgs. And then the initiation process kicks in again when you decide that you need an amendment to your orgs. So that's what confused me at first when Elizabeth presented me with it. But I think it's sort of the overall life cycle of a schedule, and it's just sort of going round and round. So whereas yes, part of it, maybe like half of it could fit into the tabs, the other half would be post handbook experience. So yeah, so we could certainly try and align them. We can look at the text and see if there's a way to align it. But
yeah, and maybe just aligning the first few bubbles in the life cycle to what does align in the tabs, and maybe an explanation to say, so in the information life cycle, this handbook, you are going to be involved in the first 3 or 2 or whatever, like to show in terms of someone who's going to take this on in a ministry. Just show that where this handbook touches on in that life cycle and kind of point it directly. And again, like align the language in the tabs and the life cycle where there is appropriate alignment, where it is a one-to-one thing.
Okay, thank you.
And then so it just kind of helps people to see, oh, okay, so there's actually a full life cycle that goes beyond this development piece, but where I'm in is in the in the first stages, sort of, and then it gives a picture of what this life cycle looks like. Anyway, just a suggestion to just take away and maybe see if that makes sense or not.
Sure. Yes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Michael, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I did, sort of just building on Emily's comments, some of the other comments about the life cycle diagram. I wondered if it might be worth considering, like, sort of replicating the diagram, maybe not to the same size, but through each of the individual tabs, and then perhaps like whatever tab relates to whatever point on the life cycle, maybe you highlight that particular bubble, if that makes sense. And then maybe at the end, when the post implementation, we could have another tab that was sort of like implementation and beyond or something like that. And then you would have each of the bubbles on the diagram kind of corresponding to one of the tabs. As you move through the tabs, you would also be sort of moving through the diagram as well. But I just sort of throw that out there.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I saw a couple of thumbs up on the screen as well and a couple of heads nodding. So that seems like a good idea. Anyone have any other questions or comments?
I don't have any more questions, but I didn't want to leave all my questions left hanging without saying I agree with what everyone said. This is a great document. Thank you for all the effort that you put into it. And I know that it's going to be beneficial in the long run.
Melinda.
Yeah, thank you. That's nice to hear.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments or concerns, I think we can wrap up our Sprint 3 review, unless Katie had anything else to add at all.
I don't think so. I'll just maybe. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Linda.
Sorry. So I'm aware that the audience, the intended audience, is ministries. But I will be using this product because our current Standard Orcs kit, which I assure you is much longer than this. So there's a lot to go for development. So hold on to your seats, folks. But I generally share that with BPS clients because they are currently developing schedules. So I see myself using this one because we haven't updated the Standard Orcs kit. So I'm wondering if we're just going to keep the audience and language so it's geared towards ministries, and I guess I can develop on the side additional tools because, for example, the prioritization committee, as far as I know, BPS clients do not go through them. So am I understanding this correctly? The audience is primarily going to be directed towards ministries?
Yeah, that's a really good point / question, Linda. I think at the moment it is geared more towards ministries or people who are developing orgs within a ministry. But that's also a good point. Maybe we want to try to make the language a little more neutral so that anybody who's developing orgs, whether they be in the ministry or they're for BPS. Yeah.
Because they won't have access to where this is posted. So I would be emailing it to them. So perhaps I'm just going to have to develop a separate tool to clarify aspects to them, I'm thinking.
Yeah, and I think too, something I was discussing a bit with Mars and Elizabeth is like, and maybe this will also answer Melinda's concern about the length and scope of the handbook, is like this handbook is intended just kind of like to help people when and where they need it. Like you don't need to read the whole thing from like front to finish, and sometimes some of the information is going to be much more than you actually need. We're writing it from the perspective that somebody has no knowledge at all and they're going in cold and they want to know the process from start to finish. But this is kind of going to be more like a choose your own adventure. So if you only need information for one section, then just go to that section. So I think you could like provide this handbook to a contractor and say, you don't need to worry about the first half. Like this is just for ministries. You're a BPS, so this doesn't apply to you. Yeah. But I'll kind of leave it up to you how you want to do that.
And I get the sense that, you know, as you're working along, because there seems to be several different voices writing it, I think rather than get hung up on perhaps the language, talk about more the content, and then afterwards have some consistency, because yeah, I can tell that's different authors. And so maybe that consistency and clarity and simplification can occur at a later stage once they sort of figure. It's kind of, I would be challenged writing an intro when I don't even have the body yet. So that's certainly a challenge I can imagine you guys going through.
Yeah, and maybe I can also kind of talk about that, because that is actually a concern among the group, because there are a bunch of people that are writing different pieces, but we are coming up with we've designated some editors. So we're going to get some content written, and then we are planning on going back and maybe refining and kind of editing the document so that it has like a common flow. And so it's not, sorry, let me try that again. So that it does kind of have that one tone and it's not just kind of piecemeal. We are going to be editing the handbook as we go through. It is a concern that the development team brought up, and it's something we will be working on going forward.
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty key, the sections about drafting, that the archivists get an opportunity to review that, because I know that when I've had to explain and give feedback on a draft, that it has to be sort of, to some degree, defensible outside even just my expertise, and having clear, precise language in the handbook to support my feedback is integral. So definitely the archivist team needs to be consulted on that later part about drafting, because
definitely
Yeah, okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Linda, you're gonna probably hate me and Natalie by the end of this because we're intending on going to the group quite a bit and saying, can you please give us feedback? So
Well, it's important because it's so integral. Like
Yeah.
I've been reviewing contractor written ones for 16 years and it's a struggle every time. And we had an 8-chapter kit. So I'm really challenged to see how you can simplify it, but go up for the challenge. But it's
Exactly.
really, really, really hard sometimes to educate on the drafting of it when a lot of people who are drafting it are writing from scratch, and it's a complete education system. And I personally find it quite exhausting after a while. Can I just write it myself is what I want to say sometimes, but okay, thank you. And I see Michael's hands up, so.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll just quickly say before I go to Mike that, yeah, part of this process is going to the stakeholders and getting your feedback. So I'm planning, at least on the archivist team, me or Natalie will be going to the group and getting your feedback on a constant basis. And I'm also planning on going to other stakeholders, whether it's me or Elizabeth, so going to the IST team or going to some of the ministry clients as well, just checking in more often with you all to be like, hey, does this content make sense, or is there something we missed? Because we are a small group and we do miss things. So we'd like to get kind of feedback from everybody. So don't worry, Linda, you're going to hear a lot from us.
I think Mike's put his hand down. So Terrence, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I think Linda's idea of where you can piggyback on.
Oh, we're having trouble hearing you, Terrence.
Hello, I'm not on mute. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, it's faint. You may want to speak up a little.
Wow.
If you don't mind.
I'll get closer. My memory of this is that the BPS was out of scope though for this project. So where we can piggyback on it for the BPS, that's good. But I would suggest not changing the language to try to make it more neutral. The process is different. They wouldn't contact the records officer as an example. They would be dealing directly with Linda. So there's some of those differences that I think it may make it more difficult. But I think where practical, we can certainly send it to them, but not changing the language. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Terrence.
Thanks. Great. Well, I think are we at time?
We are at 11:15. That is time. Our next sprint review will be in 3 weeks' time, so August 18th. You will be getting an invite to that as well. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I think the next steps for our key stakeholders in the ministries is to actually use this handbook to start doing some of that schedule development. And so we will be reaching out to you and trying to figure out how you can get that started. And because it's one thing to actually see the handbook and read it, but yet it's another to actually put it to use. So once again, thank you so much. We'll see you in 3 weeks.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great work, team. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.